The heart of the hymn, the next few verses, is really about Christology. And that's kind of what most of the hymn is about. It's about who is Christ. Now, on the one hand, Paul appears to describe Jesus as like the perfect human being. When he says he's the image of the invisible God, any first century Jewish reader would be an echo of the book of Genesis. If you recall, in the book of Genesis chapter 1, when God creates man and woman, it says, he made man and woman in his image and likeness. Right? And so that's an Adamic term. So when Paul describes Jesus as the image of God, in effect what he's doing is saying that Christ is the new Adam. He's the new man. He's the beginning of a new humanity and the inauguration of a new creation. Which, if you've seen any of my other videos on Paul, you know this is a constant theme in the Pauline letters. However, Paul isn't only saying that Jesus is the perfect man or the new Adam or the beginning of a new humanity. He's also saying that he's fully divine. If you keep reading here, he goes on to say, in him all things were created, heaven on earth, whether visible or invisible, thrones, dominion, principalities, powers, they were all created through Christ and for Christ. Now pause there. What's he talking about? When he says thrones, dominions, principalities, power, what's that a name for? Well, if you look at other letters of Paul, Paul makes this very clear that these are his terms for the angelic powers. These are different categories of the invisible spirits that we refer to as the angels. So on the one hand, Christ is a new Adam. He's a human being. He's the image of God. On the other hand, he's also above all of the creatures of the world. He's, in fact, the one through whom creation came into being. He's the one through whom the angels were created. So he's both a human being and a super angelic being. If you think about it in terms of the divide between creature and creator, on the one hand, as a human being, he has a created human nature. On the other hand, he's the creator. He's the one through whom the world is made. I mean, who is this man? How can he be both fully human and fully divine or super angelic? Well, Paul goes on to describe, because he was before all things, in him all things hold together. And then in verse 19, in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell. What does that mean? Well, if you keep reading in the letter to the Colossians, you'll see literally what it says here in the Greek is, in him all the fullness was pleased to dwell. It just says the fullness, the pleroma in Greek. And what Paul means by that isn't made explicit until you go a few verses down. In chapter 2, verse 9, he actually makes clear that he means all the fullness of God, literally the fullness of deity, dwelt in him bodily. So this is a Pauline way of referring to what John would call the incarnation. The fact that Jesus isn't just the highest creature among all the other creatures, like Arius would later say him to be, but rather he is God himself in bodily form. He has taken on a human nature. As the new Adam, he is also the one in whom the fullness of deity dwells bodily, and the one through whom every other creature in the world was made. And for that reason, according to the Colossians hymn, he's able to reconcile not just mankind, not just humanity to God, but all of creation is, so to speak, going to be under the dominion of Christ. That's why he says, he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Now, whenever you see that expression, all things, in Paul, the Greek is tapanta. It literally means all things, or everything. But it's a way of referring idiomatically to the cosmos. Right? Like if we want to talk about everything it is, we'll usually use the expression, the universe. In the first century AD, the writers of the New Testament will say tapanta, the everything, right? Or all things. So the picture here of Christ in the Colossians hymn, is powerful because it's not just he's the Messiah, the Christ, the anointed one. It's that he's the cosmic Redeemer. He is, as some scholars have referred to it as, the cosmic Christ. Because he's not just the Lord of the church or the Lord of Israel. He's not even just the Lord of the angels. He's the Lord of the universe. He's the one through whom the entire universe was made, and he's the one who reigns over the universe as Christ the King.